Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 667th edition of the Feuerstein's Fire American Soccer Show. But it's a special show today because late afternoon over in the United Kingdom, my special guest today is Leeds United broadcaster and Wrexham native Bryn Law as we talk about the magical third consecutive promotion of Wrexham AFC. The Fairytale continues. Bryn, welcome to the show today. It's late afternoon over there in the United Kingdom. It's wonderful to have you. And boy, what can we say about? I mean, you have to admit, record-breaking news, record-breaking stuff involving Wrexham AFC going from the National League to the EFL Championship these last 3 seasons. But first of all, how are you?
Well, I'm quite tired, to be honest with you. So, as those who may remember the previous appearance, I don't usually sound like this, but I sound like this because over the last fortnight, basically, I've spent my entire time attending promotion parties at various football grounds up and down England and Wales. So I'm just at the end of what has been the most chaotic, kind of glorious, fantastic 2 weeks of watching football that I've ever had the good fortune to enjoy. And by the way, we'll probably never ever see again.
Probably not, but real quick, obviously he works at Leeds United TV, and seeing them getting re-promoted back to the Premier League after their 1 year of relegation, quickly, what's it like over there with Leeds and the entire community over there? Just they rebounded so quickly.
Well, it's good that you mentioned the entire community, because the reason I sound like this predominantly is that I spent yesterday afternoon on there were 3 open top buses. We have the double-decker buses in the UK. So there were 3 of those with open tops, and on each of those was a party of the Leeds United players, management team, coaching staff, dignitaries, quite a few Americans, the guys who were in the ownership team. So I was also amidst them, because I was working for LUTV. So we live streamed the whole event. I went out on YouTube. I think it apparently had up to 100,000 people watching it live, but we had we had 150 to 200,000 people on the streets of Leeds. The place was just absolute bedlam, and it was an incredible experience. I mean, just a kind of mind-blowing experience to be on the bus driving through the mid. So the 3 buses travelled in convoy from the stadium, and then they went right through the heart of the city centre, and the place just went mad. And so, as well as a few interviews that I did, there was a bit of singing, there was a lot of shouting, there was a lot of dancing, there was a lot of partying. My hair half an hour ago was blue, not its normal silver stroke white, because there were so many flares being held up that the blue smoke from the flares turned my white hair blue. And then the party went on long into the night, and it was a true community event, and I had the conversations with the American people on board who were looking at this thing. It was the first time Leeds had this to experience for a long time, because although Leeds had a promotion to the Premier League a few years ago, it was in the lockdown period, and so they celebrated that. There was a crowd gathering outside the stadium, but it was nothing at all like this. It was a much, much smaller scale event, whereas this thing was just huge. So there's a lot of people making up for something that they missed out on in COVID and lockdown. And so I think the Americans were completely blown away by what they saw, by what they witnessed, because to them it was the reason why they'd done it. Because when you see crowds of that size and that level of enthusiasm and excitement in front of you, well, that's what you've invested in, isn't it? That's what you've put your money into, to try and kind of to get something back from that group. So they saw yesterday even more potential around Leeds United, based on all those people who came out for that event to celebrate the success that the club had had. So a stadium that currently holds 36,000, they're going to start work on that quite soon by the sounds of it, to develop that. So they're parallel with the Wrexham story that we'll discuss shortly. But you saw yesterday the potential for, a bigger stadium, which is what they plan to have, and a bigger stadium which you fill every week, which is also what they hope to have. So it was there that they, sometimes these things are, the guys have been in the ground. A lot of the investors have come over from the States to watch Leeds United games. I've met quite a few of them, and they really enjoy the experience of being in Ellen Road, because Ellen Road is like an old school football stadium. Facilities are not at all good. It's the main stand has been like that since the 1950s, basically. But the experience of being in it when it's packed and there's a good game to watch is kind of second to none, because you can't really replicate it in many other places these days. So their challenge with the redevelopment of the stadium will be to hold on to that bit. So they've seen inside the stadium. One or two of them have been stood with the away supporters on games, and I know they've loved that experience as well. So they've seen it from that perspective. But then yesterday they saw the entire city and beyond come out to celebrate the success of the football team. So I think they will be kind of, they'll feel there's a bit more pressure on them in a sense now to produce, to get it right, because these people are desperate for it, and they saw that yesterday. So it was a really, really uplifting day. It was a great day. I mean, I've lived in Leeds a long time, 30 years plus. And so to have that opportunity to ride around the bus and to see all the people of the city out having just the best day of their lives was an honour and a privilege. And we had a few beers as well, obviously. So
Why not? Why not? And now, of course, the main topic of this show today, this town in Wales, this lovely town in Wales, just I don't know if I can, comprehend what they've been through. Obviously, I can tell you there are many. I wouldn't say there are towns that equal the size of Wrexham in this country, but in several parts of this country, now there are towns that are dead. They're called ghost towns. The buildings are still there. The people are not. It's just they're empty. It's a shell of what it used to be, depending on the type of town it is, like a coal mining town, such and such and so on. So the economy is no longer around. But for this community in Wales, for Wrexham itself, could you or your fellow Wrexhamites fathom the amazing turnaround, not only that the town has had, but what their club has done after all those years of shenanigans, backstabbing, the stories I've heard and seen, even in the docuseries here in the United States? Could you fathom this? What the hell is going on over there, Bryn? What the hell happened, and how? I mean, we'll get to Rob Ryan and Rob and Ryan. We'll get to them in a moment, but internally, have you stopped pinching yourself with this a wonderful thing of the community celebrating not just themselves but their football club?
No, it's still. I mean, it's a few years in now, and we're still at the kind of trying to make sense of it stage to a large degree, and and this is just the latest chat. It feels like the latest chapter. But if you'd asked me at the start of this football season whether there was a likelihood of Wrexham getting promoted from the League One to the Championship, I'd have said, well, maybe, but it would have been a kind of tentative maybe. It would have been on the basis of the fact that I thought they could possibly get in the top six, but there was no way I would ever. I don't part easily with my money anyway, tight Yorkshireman these days, but there's no way I'd have parted with my cash to back Wrexham to get automatic promotion at the start of the season. And yet they finished it with 92 points, a club record points total. So something that there was a disconnect in our perceptions perhaps there, between the people who were involved with the football club and me as a fan of the football club. But as we've heard Rob McElhanney say in the last few days, consolidation is not a word that he understands, and consolidation is a word that we bandy around as kind of football reporters or football supporters, very often, particularly in England, where the setup allows the promotion relegation concept, but also there is a kind of mid-table, very often they call it mid-table mediocrity, that security of just being not great but not terrible either, and you can kind of operate at that level fairly quietly for a long period. And it is actually a state that some clubs aspire to, because it's better than being bad. So mid-table mediocrity was kind of something that I would certainly have settled for this season. I think many of the fans like me, of my generation, if you like, the older fans, would have certainly said the same. I've had those conversations with people. There may be elements of the newer fan cohort who thought, oh, no, of course we can go up, we can do anything. But we'd have felt, as old sages would have felt, that wasn't really based on kind of any comprehension of what lay ahead in terms of the improved teams we'd be playing against. And yet we smashed it, frankly. And, it ultimately finished quite well clear of Wycombe, who were the one side who threatened to sort of derail Wrexham's promotion attempt. But what we have all tried to do, I think, collectively, and I was at the game when Wrexham got promoted, the win over Charlton, that was an absolutely fantastic day. But we had many conversations before and after as to how this had been achieved. And you come down to you'd come down to the conclusion that really it's based around the fact that there's a very good manager in place, backed by a really supportive management team. And the combination of the two, plus the momentum established in the two previous promotions, has proved good enough again. So on that basis, who knows what happens next season?
Exactly. It's just unbelievable. And, when this whole thing got started, obviously it's tough to get a quality manager to come to a club that's in the fifth division of English football. Obviously, the National League is, I don't want to go too far. You can stop me if you'd like. You can challenge me for when I say this, the graveyard of professional football. Can we say that? Or?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a step away from the graveyard, perhaps. I mean, you can go lower. and there are, so Stockport County who've become the sort of cartoon baddies in a little bit in terms of a rivalry with Wrexham, primarily through the docu-series. It's quite close to Wrexham, so it is one of the sort of, geographically, there is a bit of a rivalry there. We've played them for a long time. But they went below National League level. They went into National League North. So they were a team who'd played at Championship level much more recently than Wrexham have. And they went into National League North, the one below. So you can drop even further, but the National League is very much like a staging ground on the way to the graveyard. So it's probably the last stopping point before you feel that all hope is now to be abandoned. So yes, we were mired in a place that is the very much the nether regions of the professional game in England, and we were truly mired there. I had no concept of a way. And I was involved with the Supporters Trust that owned the football club for a number of years, for quite a long time. I couldn't see a way out. I couldn't see a route back to where we've been. And I started, my first ever game at Wrexham was in March 1979, and that was a second tier game. So in those days it was called Division 2, now it's called the Championship. So that was a second tier game. We played Blackburn Rovers, won by 2-1. There was about 10,000 inside the ground. And it was Ollie Rathbone's dad, Mick. It was his debut for Blackburn Rovers that day, as he revealed to me when I spoke to him at half-time in the Charlton game the other day. So Ollie Rathbone, who's been one of the star players for Wrexham this season, his dad played in that game, the first one that I ever saw, the first ever Wrexham game I saw. But that was in the second tier level. The next two home games I saw were against Sunderland and Stoke. The crowds were 20,000 for both of those games. And then we had 3 more seasons at that level, struggled pretty much every season and relegated in the last one, and have never got back since. And that was the only time the club's ever played at that level. So there is no in Wrexham's history, and it's often described as a kind of a proud history. It's a long history for sure, but we've only ever operated at second tier level once, and for that short amount of time. So this is new. This is, new to most Wrexham fans. I was having a kind of look around, there's a place opposite the stadium where you can go and have a drink, a place called the Mice Gwyn. A lot of the tourist guys, I'll meet up with there and have chat with there. And I was having a beer there after the game, after the Charlton game with friends, and looking around, and we were trying to work out how many people in that area would actually remember Wrexham playing in the second division previously, having got relegated. I think it was in 1982. So not many is the answer. So it's not this, this is not Wrexham returning to a place to its rightful position by any stretch of the imagination, because this is not where Wrexham have operated. So this is, it's all but new, this experience now. And places the size of Wrexham don't usually get to this level. A town stroke city with the population that Wrexham has doesn't usually get to this level, because you're playing against a team like Leeds United, and Leeds United has third or fourth biggest population in England, and fan base. Every game is watched by 36,000 people, and they have players who are on multi-million-pound contracts, and they played in the Premier League recently and going back to the Premier League now. So that's who Wrexham would have had as their opponent this season. Next season there'll be Leicester City, who won the Premier League. What was it? How many years? 10 years ago, was it? So Leicester City, who've been Premier League winners in recent memory, will be Wrexham's equals next season. And that's the craziness of the situation that Wrexham have found themselves in now.
I want to put this up because, this timeline's been unbelievable ever since both Rob McElhanney and Ryan Reynolds became owners of the club. Ever since moving to this new platform, Bryn, I've been I'll admit it, I've been overdoing it on graphics. So I'm kind of proud of this one myself. So I'm going to hit the button, and if you're amazed, I'll take any plaudits that you'll give me. It's fine. I'll take any plaudits. Any Wrexham fan watching is going to be fine. So 1, 2, 3, and bam. Whoops, didn't work. Let's see. There we go. How about that?
Okay, good. Like it.
I mean, this timeline's unbelievable. And maybe, there are those that were in the front office of the club that said, even though they did not go straight to promotion in their first season as owners for Ryan and Rob, some felt that, look, they were glad that this happened because, you put the brakes on and maybe, slow down a little bit. But nope. After that unfortunate loss in the playoffs to Grimsby Town in extra time, then the magical run began. I mean, you win the league in the National League, and then you move on the following season to League Two. Where did you feel they were going to finish at League Two? Did you want them mid-table? Did you feel that they were mid-table into League Two?
I didn't want them, but I would have been more than happy with that, because coming back to that dull old word consolidation, you'd have looked at it and said, well, actually, we do need to re-establish elements of the infrastructure of the football club. I mean, so that your beautiful graphic is the tale of something that's never happened before, because no club has ever had back to back successive promotions. So clubs have gone up through the leagues quickly, but nobody's done back to back promotions. So the thing that is most kind of remarkable about that is that you are improving to the level that you're one of the best two teams in each division that you've moved into successively. But the transition for that is so short. You're talking about season finishing in May, and then resumption of activity in the higher division in very early August. So you've got, effectively, once the players have been sent away, you've got 6 weeks to get ready for it. And so that transition has been achieved incredibly successfully. But those 6-week blocks, you can't do all the other stuff. Like the new stand is now, even as we speak, I think they're starting to build a new stand. But they haven't had time to do any of that stuff. They haven't, so the stadium next season will be back to the reduced capacity because there'll be no temporary stand there anymore. So you'll be seeing Wrexham will have the smallest clubs the smallest crowds in the Championship. I'm pretty sure, because all the other clubs in it will be better supported. And because you just can't get enough people, you can't get any more people in the stadium. So there'll be the smallest ground in the Championship. There'll be an open end there again because that's where the work's going on. There's a new pitch being laid definitely as we speak, because I was speaking to Charlie, the famous groundsman, the other week. He came to watch the Leeds game with me. He's a big Leeds fan. So he's got the job of taking the pitch up, and they're putting a completely new pitch down. People will remember from the docu-series that they had the problem when they relayed the pitch and then they had to take it up again immediately because it hadn't taken, and it cost them a lot of money. Well, now they're putting a new one down with undersoil heating and all the rest of it. It's cost them even more money. But that's part of the attempt to catch up in terms of the things that you're expected to have at these higher levels. So as quickly as the team's getting promoted through the divisions, everybody else is trying to keep up with them. And that's going to be a real challenge because, from my perspective, I've spent 2 seasons and loads of time watching football in the Championship. I've watched more Championship football than our Premier League football down the years. And so I've seen the kind of media facilities that you get in the Championship. You get lots of ex-Premier League clubs coming down. There are criteria that you have to have around your media facilities in the Premier League. So it's pretty stringent, interview areas and media theatres and all those kinds of things you have to have. But you don't need them at Championship level, but lots of Premier League clubs come down to Championship level and have them. So you have other clubs whose facilities aren't quite so good, but there's nowhere that's going to be as cramped and as tight as they are at Wrexham because, well, they're going to have to provide more because there's going to be an increased level of sort of overall coverage for the football club at that second tier level. More people want to come on cover the games, so they're going to have to provide space for them, a room for them, refreshments for them, all the kind of elements that the higher you go, you're expected to provide. So these are little things, but they all need changing. Monitors at most grounds in the Championship, you have a monitor so you can watch the action. I mean, these things sound pretty rudimentary, I'm sure, from an American perspective, but these are things that aren't always there in when you cover games in England. So there are elements like that they've got a lot of work to do this summer just to get the basic stuff in place and ready. Leeds United turn up with a kind of a huge entourage when they arrive as a football club because they're a top-end football club and they have all the team that goes with that, video analysts and sports and conditioning coaches, an army of playing coaches, all the rest of it. So they have small dressing rooms at Wrexham. So there's big groups of people will be arriving who all need accommodating. And if anyone's lucky enough to have ever had the kind of backstage tour at Wrexham, it's great. But it's as it was. That stand that the tunnel is in and the dressing rooms are in was there when I watched my first game. I think it went up in about 1972, and it absolutely hasn't changed since. Nothing in there is different. I mean, they painted the walls and stuff like that, but basically what's inside it is exactly as it was then. So it was a ground that was suited to 1972 football, not to 2025 football. So there's all that sort of stuff that needs to be done. The training ground is a big issue because the club doesn't own a training ground. Now, in the Championship, everybody's got their own training ground, and some of them are really, Leicester's is brilliant. So some of them are really good facilities, and Wrexham don't own one. They use the one that the club used to own, they call Colliers Park, which is now owned by the Football Association of Wales, and Wrexham rent it off them. But they don't have unlimited access to the facility. There are elements of the facility they don't have access to. So I don't think the players can shower after training at the training ground. They have to go back to the stadium to do that. So those kind of things there's an expectation at Championship level that they're the kind of basics that you'd have in place, and Wrexham lack these things. So the catch-up job from getting through the divisions as outlined in the graphics so quickly is that they've got to try and race to get all the other stuff in place. so they do fit in the new surroundings.
Does the town government now get involved? I mean, obviously, with everything that's happened with the club, not just with the club, but the tourism that the town has been having with the success of this club, does the town now say, it's our turn to chip in for Wrexham Football Club, just like Rob and Ryan has done for the town and not just for the town, but they've immersed themselves in Welsh culture. I mean, you'd like to think maybe the government of the country should probably. I'm not saying they should, but if they do lend a hand financially, maybe this would be a great thing.
Well, that's a lovely idea, and I would agree with you wholeheartedly that you would expect that to be the case. But I would be dubious as to whether it actually will be the case. I mean, I don't suppose UK is particularly different to USA currently, but
Mhm.
local authorities um, are struggling financially. So,
Ah.
the basic jobs that local authorities, that councils usually do, there's the stuff like getting rid of your garbage,
Hmm.
rubbish as we call it here, those kinds of things. Providing education, local education services and health services, all those transport, all those kind of things that the councils here do, they're struggling to pay for. So a, a big project like this is unlikely to attract too much support
Mm.
externally, unfortunately, currently. But you're absolutely right, because the impact both to the local economy and for Wales in general of what Rob and Ryan have put in place at Wrexham has been seismic. You know, it's still the craziest thing of this whole thing is that Wrexham now is a tourist industry. I mean, nobody who grew up in Wrexham would ever have, seen that was feasible or possible. And yet I bump into people all the time when I'm over there, with American accents, South African accents, Australian accents, whatever. I hear all sorts of languages, and it's brilliant. But they accommodating them is another challenge, because there aren't many hotels still in Wrexham. So that there's a lot of work across the board to be done here. But I think the best people that Wrexham can rely on is going to be Wrexham, because I'm not sure. I think that there's a willingness there on the part of the local authorities and the national authorities in Wales for it to happen. So you've heard Rob and Ryan talk about the bureaucracy involved in building things in England and Wales, and how much red tape they've encountered in trying to get the new stand, sort of get the permission for that. Well, all that's happened now. So they've got through those kind of hurdles. So they got assistance perhaps in the process of getting this thing over the line to get it done. But I don't think they'll get too much beyond that currently, because it's just
Hmm.
not the way. It's just not the way the place is working at the moment here.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, look, we're hoping for more good fortune coming to the club and coming to the town if, the club does get that training facility done and they don't have to worry about renting Welsh FA's training facility. So we'll see what happens there. But when it comes to if I ever do come over, I guess I'm gonna have to bunk with you. So save my money from the hotel bill. I promise I'll help you pay for the groceries if you let me come over. But I'm just kidding. But anyway, you know this past season, being in League One after getting promoted from League Two, what have you seen from this season that made you think maybe there's a possibility that they're going to do it again, that they're going to make that move now to the championship? Where did you feel that? When did you see that? When did you thought that?
Well, it's been a really interesting season, because it's been a bit of a conflict, in a sense, because Phil Parkinson, who I've known for a long time, great guy, and I've worked sort of relatively closely with him at some of the clubs that he's been manager of elsewhere. So he's done this incredible job, and what he had to do this season was change the style of play to an extent to make Wrexham much harder to beat. In the last two seasons, they've had by and large, have had more better players than the opposition. So in games, they often would kind of run over the opposition and just have too much quality. And so the opposition couldn't cope. So there were some big wins for Wrexham last season, even at that higher level, which was kind of unexpected at the time. But you could see that there was a quality in the group there that made that happen. This time around has not been as big a quality gap with the opposition, but he's still managed to come up with a new way or a slightly different way to come out on top. So if you look at Wrexham's results through the course of the season, much closer. I think they won 10 games by 1-0. So two key elements were you had to make sure you scored a goal, but you also had to make sure you didn't let the opposition score a goal. And if you did the two of those things successfully, Wrexham would come out on top. And obviously Wrexham did that successfully a lot. So defensively, that strength defensively became the bedrock this year. So some of the performances, I've seen Wrexham win a number of games this season without what you describe as perhaps playing well might be one phrase. So you would look at it, and it wouldn't be a particularly entertaining game from a purist perspective. But Wrexham would do enough. So at Rotherham away, for instance, they scored a goal, I think, after a minute or two. Paul Mullins scored one of his 3 goals. And they won the game with that goal scored in the first minute or two. So they were able to defend successfully for 88 plus minutes, 95, 96, whatever it turned out to be. And that's what they've managed to do on so many occasions through the course of the season. With the key twist to this came when they recruited in January. So American audience for Wrexham will definitely obviously have stars like Paul Mullin, Ollie Palmer and people like that who featured through the series have been kind of big heroes, both of them, those tiny little cameo roles in Deadpool that they ended up with, the latest Deadpool film. So that kind of mad stuff going on where Paul Mullin's like a big star in America. And that's crazy, but that's what happened. But then in January, Paul had probably wasn't fit enough because he'd had problems in the summer with his fitness, and so didn't get into shape in time for the start of the season. So he just couldn't force his way into the team in January. And in January, Ollie Palmer was in a similar situation as well. And Wrexham went out and recruited in those two kind of positions because I think the manager had seen that there was a problem, there was a lack of goals in the team, and he needed to go and rectify that. So he went and brought Sam Smith from Reading, who was one of the leading goal scorers in League One at the time, and cost Wrexham a club record transfer fee. So probably a couple of £1 million was spent on him, which is way more than we've ever spent on anybody else before. And Jay Rodriguez came in, who was playing at Burnley, who's played Premier League football. I think he's got an England cap as well. Played lots of Premier League football, and he was with Burnley in the Championship, who are now back in the Premier League because they got promoted this season. And he came from there to Wrexham, so he dropped down a division, and he's kind of in the twilight years of his career, but still, substantial earner. So he came in as well, and the two of them, from the moment they started playing for the team, that's when there was the big shift. Because from the point at which you trace it back, the point at which they came into the team, basically Wrexham stopped losing games. Now, they weren't necessarily winning them kind of with great style and panache, but they were winning most of them. And those two players kind of played a key role in that second half push towards promotion. If you look at Wrexham's record over the last few weeks, at the end of the season, it's been fantastic. And you've got all those experienced guys in the Wrexham squad. So you got the guy, James McLean, who's, the player everybody loves to hate in England. Gets booed at every stadium he plays at, but the Wrexham fans absolutely love him, possibly because of that. But he's been there and done it, and he's got 100 caps for the Republic of Ireland, and he's played in the Premier League loads. So he's a really experienced player. Again, well into his 30s. You've got Stephen Fletcher, 38 now, I think he is, who came on and scored crucial goals for Wrexham off the substitutes bench. Then they added Matty James, who's played at Premier League level. I think he was in the Leicester squad that won the title. Again, sort of a veteran player. So they brought all this experience of the pressure situation into the dressing room with them. And I think it really told in the final 10 games or so of the season, because Wycombe, who were the main rivals, basically fell apart in those closing stages of the season. And they almost handed it to Wrexham in essence. And so even where there were a couple of little wobbles for Wrexham, sort of back-to-back draws that they should have been wins, they came through and they got promoted because they had the experience in the group to deal with it. They also have that experience in the group of how do you win football matches, because that's all Wrexham have been doing for 3 seasons now, basically, is winning football games. So they know how to do it, and it all came together. And the last game against Charlton that I saw, I think that was as well as I've seen them play all season. And Charlton were a really good record. They're up in the playoffs themselves. They were potentially playing to get automatic promotion themselves, although it was a distant chance, but they were still in the hunt. And Wrexham really played really, really well and beat them easily, actually. And so they arrived at a place that they had, the journey there had been a bit tough at times. It had been a bit tough to watch at times, but incredibly successful again. And that's Phil Parkinson. That's the manager. He did that.
To me, and I'm going to compare him to, as we call them, head coaches over here, but
Yeah.
it but more for American football than regular football. I mean, to me, I would compare him to a Bill Parcells. I mean, he's a good bloke, but he's very demanding, and he demands that you follow the game plan to a T. The players respect him. Obviously, everyone will always respect the manager over there. That's without a doubt. But to me, he's got that panache of being a true football guy. I mean, if I'm going off the rail, you can let me know. But still, I mean, if
No,
it,
that's
you
bang
know,
on. He is a true football guy. He's he's got a long track record of getting teams promoted. He's never managed at the highest level, and that's kind of a bit endemic of the way that we view our head coaches, stroke managers in the UK, is that the ones with the kind of more exotic CVs are the ones that tend to get the jobs in the Premier League, and the guys who've spent years kind of dogging it away in the lower divisions, being really successful with smaller clubs, never get the opportunity at the highest level for whatever reason. I don't know quite why that is. So Phil has a record in getting clubs. He's got clubs to this level before and kept them at in that level as well. But he is what you describe. He's a football guy, and is what's been really impressive in terms of the way he's done things is that, yes, he's doing the standard job of picking a football team and training them and all the rest of it. He'll have an input into recruitment. That's the sort of standard role. But the thing that he's had to do at Wrexham is what hardly any other manager's ever had to do, is deal with all the stuff that goes on around the football club. The circus, as the Charlton manager Nathan Jones infamously described it. That didn't work very well. But the bit that goes on around the manager at Wrexham, with the cameras are ever present, they're on the bus, they're in the dressing room, that kind of could inhibit people. And it has. I know other managers who've banned cameras in these circumstances with the fly on the wall stuff going on. They didn't want the cameras in the dressing room. That was the sanctuary. That was the holy of holies. You don't come in here. So they kept everything out and kept it all at arm's length and didn't engage with the documentary producers. I don't think Phil probably had the option to do that, because it would have been made clear to him that he needed to do that. But he's done it extremely well, because not only has he embraced the concept around the documentary, he recognises its value, but he's also done a really good job in keeping the players in a place where they're only really focused on football. And I think that's one of his hardest jobs, because there have been a couple of wobbles kind of away from on that basis this season, where he's had to manage things that have been said by other people, the noise around the club. So Ollie Palmer's dad putting social media comments on about why his son wasn't playing. All that stuff at Wrexham, it gets magnified and picked up and it becomes national news because it's a big deal here as well. So there's a real clickbait element to it. Wrexham bad thing happens is a good headline to put out for people to dive on the story. So that's happened a couple of times this season, but he's just managed it steadily, calmly, and got on with his job. And he made the big calls in terms of these star players, but his view would be nobody's bigger than the football club. And he's made that manifestly clear in the way that he's been prepared to leave out those who you would expect were almost untouchable. But he's done it. And so the players know where they stand, I think, with him. And his assistant, Steve Parkin, I've known him a long time. He's a brilliant bloke. He's a proper foil for Phil Parkinson. And then they've got a good team of experienced people around them as well. So put all that together and you've got a guy who's managed to keep the full focus on football whilst kind of embracing the other stuff, but not to the extent that it intrudes on what he does. And I know there's been a couple of instances where he has had to take steps to make sure it doesn't intrude on what he does. So he ultimately keeps control. And that's been his greatest achievement in many senses, is just keeping control and the focus on football and still allowing all the other things to happen at the same time.
Exactly. Now, starting in the 2025-26 season, Wrexham will be in the EFL Championship. Now, I want to say this is the comment made, and you'll know who I'll be talking about. He's currently a pundit here in the United States on CBS Sports Galazo Network, Nigel Rio-Coker. I think you know Nigel very well. He says that, everything about Wrexham was brilliant. It was fantastic for the club, fantastic for the town and the community. But now, even though it's not the Premier League, the Championship is the big boy league because you have perennial clubs who have been in the Premier League or are trying to get back into the Premier League. And here comes Wrexham coming in like, who is this club? Who do they think they are? You've been promoted 3 straight seasons. You haven't faced any of these clubs in this league. Now, obviously, he's just saying that because he thinks there's got to be a little bit of reality that's going to come Wrexham's way. But in your mind, do you believe that the reality will come in finally to Wrexham, that they may be mid-table, or do you feel in some ways, and I'm not saying you got to throw a little chutzpah in there, but could they do the impossible? Could they make 4 straight promotions straight to the Premier League?
Right. Okay. There's quite a lot to unpick there. So in answer to the last question first, yes, they could. Will they? No, they won't. Is reality going to strike? Well, I think there's already reality there, but is this going to look a little less like it has over the last 3 seasons? I have to say, hand on heart, I think it is going to look a bit different. I know Championship level football well, and so I've been actually kind of semi-analysing through the course of this season and looking at clubs and thinking, how would the Wrexham that I'm seeing this season, how would they compete against this team, whoever that might be, Oxford or Bristol City or whatever. And there's probably 6 or 7 down the bottom that I think at the moment Wrexham could go up against. And then as you start getting higher, I think less and less likely. And as you get towards the top 6, I think big gulf. As you get towards the top 2, huge gulf. So I think that mid-table thing you mentioned, for me, it would be, if Wrexham finished mid-table in the Championship next season, it would be akin to getting promoted out of League One, frankly. You'd be on an open-top bus around Wrexham celebrating that, because the step is, somebody said to me, a football person said to me, at the end of the League Two season, somebody who knows what they're talking about, at the end of the League Two season said to me, Wrexham will do all right in League One, it's not that good. So they'd looked and assessed, and I kind of scoffed, but he was right ultimately. I don't think anybody would make that same statement about the League One to Championship jump, because at the top end at the very least, You've got players who've cost 30, 40 million quid potentially in their careers who are on 10 million quid or more a season potentially, who've got numerous international caps. You're coming up against all of that at the top end of it. Obviously, sliding scale down, not so much maybe, but still, players who've come in who are of quality, and infrastructure that's set up to improve players. So the things like the really good training facilities and all those elements that recruitment, it becomes more difficult for Wrexham at this level because players want to know where they're working Monday to Friday. They only go to the stadium for the game. So, you're there for 2-3 hours or whatever on one afternoon or evening. The rest of the time is spent at the training facility. So you want to know what the training facility looks like, what it offers, because you will have an expectation because your last club had X. So you want to at least replicate that with the new place you're going. Well, Wrexham aren't going to be able to have that conversation with people currently because they don't have that to offer. So they're going to have to find other ways to attract that quality of player for whom the day-to-day facilities are important. And they're also financially, the leap is massive now. From the Wrexham are paying, way more than they've ever paid out in terms of salaries now, but it's still at a reasonably manageable. It's at a manageable level still. But if you were to go all in and pay what Championship clubs, because remember the Championship clubs that come down from the Premier League get the parachute payments come with them, so they bring down, what is it, 120 million or whatever it is in the first year after they've been relegated from the Premier League. And then they get it again the year after. So they are being supported after their relegation to try and keep them financially secure. But what that means for everybody else in the division is you're trying to compete with that in terms of what they can offer for wages, because they're trying to get themselves back into the Premier League as quickly as possible. So you've seen this year where the 3 clubs that got promoted got relegated. Happened also last season, and one of the 3 that went down last season is going back up again, having gone down the season before. Leeds went down the season before that, going back up again. So you got what they call the yo-yo clubs now, who are just going up and down, Championship
What
to Premier
Newcastle
League.
was.
Yeah, for a while. There have been a few, West Bromwich Albion for a bit, were a yo-yo club. So they'd have 3 promotions and 3 relegations pretty much in successive seasons. But every year, every time they were doing that, there was more money coming into the club. So you could invest in a big, strong squad. So you're up against that at the top end of the Championship, which is proving almost insurmountable for all the kind of regular size Championship clubs. So you'll get Sheffield United maybe get promoted through the playoffs. That'll be the 2 of the 3 clubs that got relegated last season coming straight back into the Premier League. The other one, of course, is Luton, who have sunk like a stone this season and have gone from the Premier League through the Championship and straight into League One. So you can do it the other way as well, by the way. And Luton, I mean, this is remarkable. 2 seasons ago, Luton Town were in the Premier League, or going to the Premier League, and Wrexham were in the National League. And now Wrexham are above Luton, having gone to the Championship, and they've gone down to League One. So the gap had been 5 divisions, and now it's flipped completely. And it's now Wrexham who are the senior club. So there's your pro-rel, by the way, guys. That's what pro-rel. If you wonder why franchise owners may not be entirely enthused with the concept, I know you've got it coming to USL. Is that right? With USL 1 and 2 or whatever.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yep.
Yeah, the reason they wouldn't be enthused about the concept perhaps is because of that. Because Luton Town were a Premier League club and now they're a League One club, 3rd tier. And that's happened in the space of 2 seasons. So, budget on that basis, not straightforward. So it does bring challenges. And for Wrexham, that's going to be the biggest challenge, is making up the gap. So what do they do that gives them that edge, that guarantees they get enough points? And it's been a high points total in Championship this year to stay up. I mean, I think it's 48 points, nearly 50 points, that's a real high number to stay in the division. So you're going to have to win quite a few games if it's the same next season. So therein lies the challenge.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Can I be fair and say the target on Wrexham's back is a lot larger than it was being in League One, but also at the same time, Have you heard chatter of jealousy with these other clubs in the Championship League, even maybe in the Premier League, that have said, who is this Wrexham? Why do they think they have this belief they can come all the way to the top? And we're going to find a way to stop them every single opportunity we get for next season just to teach them a lesson.
Yeah, well, everyone hates us. That's great. I mean, it didn't used to be the case, but that was because nobody knew who Wrexham were, or they'd forgotten who Wrexham were. So the Millwall fans have a song that they sing. No one likes us. We don't care. So we haven't quite adopted that at Wrexham yet, but the kind of the mindset is similar. And yeah, there's kind of plenty of envy, and I understand that this thing happened to this small obscure club that hadn't been quite as small or as obscure in the past, but currently was, that everybody would like to happen to their club. So there is a parallel between the two clubs that I watched, between Leeds United and Wrexham, because wherever Leeds go, they always encounter there's that element. They're the team that everybody wants to beat in the Championship. So the opposition players tend to play at a peak. The opposition fans, well, the ground's fuller for a start. Usually the biggest crowd of the season. Always completely full away end, because Leeds take thousands of travelling supporters with them, as Wrexham very much are doing and will do next season as well, by the way. There'll be brilliant away support next season with bigger allocations available as well. So everybody wants you. They describe it here as everybody's cup final. So the Leeds game in the Championship, everybody's cup final. The Wrexham game in League Two and in League One have been everybody's cup final. So it just means there's more on every game. That expectation around every fixture is so high, and everybody wants to beat you. And that's when you need those experienced guys that I spoke about, because they can handle that pressure. And you need those individuals and those characters in the group to make sure you see your way through it. So that'll be stoked up even more the case next season. There'll be a lot of sort of bigger clubs for sure, who will not want to engage. Their fan base won't want to engage in the concept that they're desperate to beat Wrexham. Because for Stoke City to say we'd love to beat Wrexham, it's a tiny bit embarrassing for Stoke City, frankly, because they shouldn't care. We've played them before in the league, but they shouldn't care. We've never played West Brom, and we've never played Ipswich, and my best mate is a West Bromwich Albion fan, so I'm looking forward to that one. Never ever played them in the league, so there's two firsts there next season. And Ipswich have just come out of the Premier League. They'll be another one who go, now we were playing Manchester United 6 months ago. Why would we be invested in beating Wrexham? So maybe there'll be a little bit of the heat taken out of that, but there will still be plenty of other clubs who will be quietly satisfied if they've put three past these upstarts, the Hollywood upstarts who arrive in town. Most of the clubs in Championship are US owned now anyway. So the US ownership concept is now sort of is so commonplace that that side of things nobody should really blink about that.
Mm. And coming to U.S. ownership, I mean, look, I have my opinions on certain owners, obviously. Look, I mean, the majority of them have done it the right way. Obviously, in the Premier League, Fenway Sports Group has done the right way with Liverpool. I believe the ownership of Leeds is with the San Francisco 49ers. They've done it the right way. There was no doubt about it. With Manchester United, I think they started off the right way, but now they've gotten it all wrong. I believe Todd Bowley, who took over Chelsea, I think he's gotten it all wrong. I just don't believe they're doing it the right way, the way that it should be. But comparing the current American ownerships in English football, what has Rob McElhanney and Ryan Reynolds done differently outside of the docuseries? What have they done the right way to put Wrexham on the map of English football, and not just in English football, but world football that loves them so much? I like in the second season of their docuseries, Welcome to Wrexham, as you said, from Australia, they're from Canada, from any of the 48 mainland states in the United States, probably even France, even countries in Africa, in Asia, in the Middle East. They come all the way around the globe to the race course to watch this club that nobody knew about, that all of a sudden they want to know you.
I think the genius of the exercise is really in the marketing. I mean, I do a bit of sports marketing teaching these days at the university in Leeds, and without being any kind of a marketing expert, but having been in the sports industry or around the sports industry for over 30 years, so I've seen it from both sides of the fence. I work for a club now. I used to work for a broadcaster, so that overview is for me is the crucial part, because they picked the right club for a start, because there were other choices, but they picked a good one because they spotted in Wrexham the opportunity to do what they do best, which is tell a story. And the narrative has been absolutely crucial in this, because they've told a story about a place and people like the story and they like the sound of the place. And more importantly, even than that, they like the people that they've been introduced to through the series. And that's made them. I've had this conversation with American fans. I came out to America in the summer to watch the Wrexham Chelsea game at Levi Stadium, and talked with fans there, because it was pretty much, there was a handful of Wrexham based supporters there, and there were 15, 16, 17,000 US based Wrexham supporters there, which was ridiculous. Great, but ridiculous. And so I took the chance to chat to people. Why are you a Wrexham fan? And it's not really the football bit is important, and it's a good hook. But one person I spoke to, female fan, she was there with a partner, and she said, I am going to Wrexham for my 40th birthday, and when I go there, I'm going to book an Airbnb, and then I'm going to walk into town and walk through town, and I'm going to go to, I can't remember, she said she was wanting to head to, but it was just the experience of going to Wrexham for her 40th birthday to walk through the town. It was that. Because I laugh and go, I've got to warn you, there's not an awful lot there, right? But they said, we don't care, because we know the town, because we recognise it, because we grew up in somewhere similar. And it's like you mentioned, like the sort of ghost towns, those places that have had it really tough and have had it really bad, where the thing that they were created to serve doesn't really exist anymore. And so the place has kind of lost its reason. So a sports team gives you still a reason to be from that place and to tell people that you're from that place. So Wrexham has clung on to this while all the big industry's gone. Wrexham's clung on to its sports team, and that's the story that's been told. So it's somewhere that people recognise. And the other great thing on that basis is the people of Wrexham, because the people of Wrexham have been unbelievable in the way that they have embraced and welcomed visitors to the town. So there hasn't been, people might, God, the place is full of tourists. It's not been that. It's been, oh, this is wonderful. Where have you come from? Please come and, have a drink. Do you want to talk? They've had, in every conversation I've had with people who've come in, said what a great welcome they've had. So I think Wrexham people have provided that side of it as well. And then others here, and they want to go there as well. But it's all based on the way that the whole thing has been. Marketing sounds like a bit of a kind of cynical term, but marketed through the docu-series. And that story has been, it's what everybody else now in their own docu-series is starting to look at. I think they've realised that it isn't necessarily, sport is sport. You win some, you lose some. Good years, bad years. We've told that story a lot. The story here is about much more than that. It's about the people who operate around this thing, regardless of good season, bad season. The local charities, local personalities, those kinds of things. That's what the story has been told here, and it still seems to be something that resonates. And so that's, for me, I mean, add to it some money, some investment, but the story is what brings the commercial deals are huge at Wrexham now. So turnover, I think in League Two last year was a record for any club ever, which was, I think, 23.7 million or something, the turnover last season, which is a phenomenal number for a club at that level. That was way better than a lot of championship clubs managed. And that comes off the back of the commercial deals. The commercial deals come off the back of the story. So it's something that they want to be involved with as well. And there's new investment on the board now with the Elaine family from New York, who were wealthy guys, but saw Wrexham as a really good community project they wanted to invest money in. So they sit on the board as well now. So there's extra investment come from them. So all these things are linked, but they're linked, I think, by the fact that initially Rob and Ryan found and told a really good story.
Yeah, no, they really have. And it just keeps on going and going and going. Obviously, you're a former BBC broadcaster at BBC Sport. Have you spoken to any former colleagues of yours, whether they are, at BBC or at Sky Sports? Even TNT Sports now is doing Premier League matches in England. But do you stay in touch with some of them, asking you, what the hell is this? How did this happen? I
But
mean, we've never seen anything like this before. And now, do they ask you, are you willing to see your club go to the Premier League?
yes, I mean, it isn't former broadcast colleagues necessarily. It's just about pretty much everybody, because lots of the Leeds United fans, when I do all the match commentaries, call all the games for the club on the LUTV club channel. So, and I've been doing that. Well, I started doing it in 1992 for the BBC, and then I've come back to do it for the club more recently. So I've done the last 6 seasons and done pretty much every single game in that time. So I have a good rapport with the Leeds United fan base, hopefully. And so when I bump into people, like yesterday, for instance, bump into loads of Leeds people yesterday around the event. And that is a question pretty much everybody asks. There have been 2 questions that everybody asks. Earlier in the season, Leeds United and Wrexham have never, ever played each other in a competitive fixture. So that has never happened. So there was a point a few weeks ago where Leeds had slipped to 3rd in the Championship, and Wrexham were up to 2nd and 6 points clear in League One, where the 2 things got as close as they ever have done to actually becoming a reality, to becoming a fixture. And then Leeds pulled away slightly again. And so it's going to be another year at least before that fixture comes to pass. So people were asking me that question on that basis. How would you feel about Wrexham playing Leeds? And then the question, as they both ended up getting promoted, that one went away. But the next one is, do you think that Wrexham could get to the Premier League? Because people are intrigued. There's actually been some really good press for Wrexham in the last few weeks around this promotion. Positive press around the way that it's been achieved. Because I think the guys, Ryan and Rob, are beginning to get real credit now. People are beginning to recognise that this is not just a throw money at it exercise, that it's actually backed by more than that, and the sort of stability that they've created around the club. And you were asking about other American owners and their success or relative failure. I think the success in this case, from Rob and Ryan's perspective, is humility is a big part of it, because they've said, we don't know. So we're going to ask. I mean, we know about this, a bit like me being a sports marketing lecturer. I don't understand sports marketing in terms of the phrases, academic sort of background for all the rest of it. But if you put the concepts in front of me, I can see how they might be applied based on my own experiences. So I think it may be a little bit like that with them, where they say, well, go and put the concept in front of us. What are we talking about here? Right. What do you think? And they're asking a question. Now, that is not commonplace in terms of maybe in management in general, but in sports ownership, how many owners ask the question and then listen to the answer? Well, they do both of those things. So they ask and they listen. So they take guidance, they take advice. They may then finally say, we're going to do this. Or they might say, you do what you think is the best thing here. They trust in their team. But both of those are good, because that gives people the confidence to make calls on stuff. But there's an overview there all the time. And they are good with the people. They're good with fans. They're really good with players. They've been great with the manager. I assume they're really good with the staff. And those things, the human touch, the going to serve pints behind the bar, those kind of things. That's a really important element to this as well, because you're there in front of people. You're real, so they know you're wealthy. They know you're successful, but they're serving you a pint at the moment, having a chat with you. That just makes them like you. And that's the concept that is important. I mean, that's what I've seen a little bit of Leeds in the last few weeks, because one of the major investors in Leeds United is Peter Lowy, who owns his father owns the Westfield Group, the shopping centres. And I've had a chance to chat with Peter, and he's a really nice guy, Australian originally, but he's been in LA a long time, I think. And he was behind the bar in there's Billy's bar at Ellen Road the other week after a big win for Leeds, and he was just standing everyone a pint in there, and just he's been to watch away games sitting in the the visitors section rather than sitting in the posh seats. He's been amongst the fans for matches. I think is really important. You've got to remind yourself who you're doing this for. So you could call it the customer base, but that doesn't sound very good. But you got to remember what the people that you're providing the product for, what their experience is of sampling that product, because only then do you understand it from their or have a better understanding of it from their perspective. So when it comes to putting prices up for tickets, which Wrexham are probably having to well, they're going to have to do it next season, because your fan base does supplement income still, less so than in the past. But the prices that Wrexham are charging this year, they're not going to be able to charge realistically next season. So you've got to put that one in front of the fan base and get buy-in. So the price is going up again, chaps, guys, men, women, everybody. You're going to have to spend more money. Now the numbers are ridiculous compared to what you pay in the States. I mean, we're looking at maybe £25 to get into Wrexham next season, as the lowest priced ticket. But then most of the seats are the same. So most people will be paying roughly that, because there are some corporate seats, but very, very few there. As the stadium gets bigger, there'll be more of that sort of stuff on offer. And I saw what the Levi Stadium had on offer, and it was just ridiculous. Again,
Oh, I know. I know.
Mind blowing.
I can tell you, I can tell you, growing up in New York City, a ticket to watch a New York Yankees baseball game a long time ago, the most expensive when I started going to baseball games in the early to mid 80s would be around, I think, $40 for the lower level of Yankee Stadium. Just no matter where you were, it was like $40. I think the box seats were probably $60 to $65, and bleachers behind the right field wall and the left field wall, that was around $3.
Wow.
Yeah, that's like 1980s level. Now it's like you gotta basically hand out two hands, one arm, and maybe an ear for box seats behind the Yankee dugout at the new stadium. Meanwhile, you hope to get a good seat anywhere in the stadium, because the amenities are just through the roof. Even an NFL game, you have to hope to get a good ticket, or at least a good price ticket, to sit inside the stadium, because everything's now, as they call it, the PSLs, the private seat licensing. It's not just the season ticket price that you're buying, but they're adding, this is your seat and your seat alone, and we're adding this charge as well. So, I mean, I hope it doesn't happen in Premier League or in
Well,
English football around the world, or even around the world. But
it kind of beginning to is, if that makes any sense. At Premier League level, there are protests at Man City against the moving sort of, there's a phrase now, legacy fans, that they use in this country. So I'm a legacy fan because I've been around watching Wrexham, so I have an expectation of what it's going to cost me to watch Wrexham, and there are probably I could look at a price tag and go, oh, I'm not paying that, because I used to pay that. So I'm not necessarily the guy that everybody wants coming in through the turnstile, because I'll only pay a certain amount, and I probably won't have anything to eat or drink, or buy a shirt in the club shop or whatever. So I don't have the value that the person who's coming for the one-off game, who will pay anything for a ticket because they've flown in from Tokyo or wherever it is to watch this one, or Ohio or whatever. They will pay what it requires to get into that thing for that one that they want to attend. And when they're there, they'll spend a load of money because they want to take souvenirs back home with them as well. So there is a creeping element being kind of identified in the English game in particular from that perspective. And I can see why it's attractive to owners as a financial model, because you guarantee more income per head, but it will come at a cost. And a place like Wrexham, it would be felt most keenly. So we did a survey, Wrexham fans, recently as to what our expectations were around the new stand that they're building and around the ground in general. What things did we want to see improved, and catering or seat view or kind of atmosphere. Where did you want to be seated? Who did you want to be seated with? All these kind of questions as a bit of a market research exercise. And you were asked for comments. Well, my comment in that box was to say that whatever you do to the stadium, I would want you to keep the basic experience the same as it is now, which is that everybody watches from a similar kind of position. In that the strength of the place, I think, is that you don't have a them and us situation. You don't look at the boxes, the big posh seats, and they are detached. Their experience is completely detached from yours. Everybody wants to be it's a common ground is a football stadium, and you sit next to the person who you may not agree with politically, may have completely different religion, skin color, whatever it may be, but you're following the same team, and that's your shared experience, and you will both at least get on that basis. If you start pushing people into different areas and they don't interact with them and they don't interact with them, that takes you into a different place, and I think it changes the atmosphere. So Tottenham Hotspur is an incredible stadium Tottenham have got, which has been described to me as the closest thing in English football to an NFL stadium, albeit one from 10 years ago. So that has all the things that, if you have money and you want to do, if you like cheese, there's a cheese bar at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So I don't go to the football for a cheese experience. I go to the football for the football and to be around people I like, for the shared experience thing. So I don't get that bit. So I suppose those people who are coming in are a corporate brigade at best, who are not necessarily, they're not there for the football. They're there because it's a good place to go to, perhaps from a business perspective or a bit of schmoozing or whatever. Different, their outlook is completely different to mine. Problem is, they've got all the money, and I haven't. So they probably won't then.
Yeah, they probably won't. Bryn, I've been really appreciative of your time. I really am very happy you've joined me today. I have two more questions to go, and then I'll let you
Okay.
go. But I guess I saw this on YouTube, and obviously it's probably a rumor mill. I don't think it'll happen because, as we've talked about, it's hard to get ideas through the township, and a lot of red tape gets thrown at whatever business or a project is coming their way. I saw this on a YouTube. I didn't play it, but it's been in the back of my mind. As great as the race course has been, and obviously they're building I believe it's the South End stand that they want to build now. Is there rumors, or is there a possibility of a brand new ground being built for Wrexham that maybe they can accommodate all this? Or do you feel maybe instead of that, like maybe expanding the race course in some form? I know looking at Google Maps, I know there's an apartment building on the southeastern end
Yeah.
of the stadium across from the parking lot
Yeah.
section that's there. But
Yeah.
would there be some form of an expansion
Well,
behind that stand, maybe on the east
I mean,
side?
people have talked about a move for quite a while, and in some senses it makes some sort of sense, because you just start from scratch and you carry on using the stadium you've got whilst the new one's being constructed, and then you go to that. So I could kind of get that. I think it'd be a pretty hard sell though. We've been at that stadium since 1864. When they dig down, when this pitch gets dug up, is getting dug up now. Talking to the guy I mentioned, Charlie, the groundsman, who you see in the Welcome to Wrexham, who's a great lad. And we were talking about this. I said, so when you go down below the grass and there's like a base underneath that, has anyone ever dug through that? And he said, no, that'll be the same base as it was in 1864. So we were speculating as to what they're going to find when they go below that. It could end up as sort of some Bronze Age sword or something appearing underneath that, which then means they can't relay the pitch. So I told him just to throw it away. If he sees anything bronze, just chuck it quickly, get rid of it. So they've been there a long time, and I think there's enough usable space around it. You're looking at the sort of location now. The apartments that you describe are student accommodation. That was built very controversially, those student blocks, as a financial benefit to previous owners who sold who used the club's car park to build those student accommodation blocks for their own purposes. And they were remunerating themselves for their investment in the club by putting those student blocks on there. So that every time anybody sees them who remembers that period, that's what they're reminded of. So that's a mark of the club's decline, those things at the back of the stadium. But I think if you took control of the entire site, and I don't think it would be, I think it would be feasible to do that. You've got quite a lot of space there still, and the stadium is in a really good place location-wise, because you've got the main road through Wrexham, they call it the bypass. So it's a pretty decent road, but it comes from the northwest, so it's a direct connection with Manchester, Liverpool, so airports and stuff like that. And the ground is a couple of 100 yards away from that. But you've also got the train station is right at the back of the stadium as well. So the station, that also provides another. If our train services were better in the UK, a lot of people do use the train to come to Wrexham, because you get off the train and you walk straight into the stadium. So that's another opportunity that you're afforded. It's on the edge of the town, so they call it the Gateway. So the project has been described as the Gateway project, because it's the first thing you see basically when you come into Wrexham. So if you make that spectacular, that would be a proper gateway. That would be an eye-catching gateway. And that's what the new stand is designed to be, because architecturally, it's quite bold in terms of the design for it. And so it's meant to catch the eye, because the stadium is meant to be developed across the board. Because my first ever game, March 1979, the seat that I sat in could even conceivably still be in place, because it's exactly the same stand that I sat in for that game. So theoretically, if it hadn't been broken in the meantime, the same seat is still there. The same seat, the hoarding for it or whatever, that's definitely still there. They haven't changed that. So that's how much scope there is for redevelopment at Wrexham. The stands are really pretty old now. They've served a fantastic purpose, and they are sort of redolent with our memories for all of us. So you don't want to see it go completely, but to see it look better would be fine. But I think they can do it. I don't think there are any plans to move away currently.
No,
because the location's pretty good, and sites elsewhere, out of town sites. One of the things, the Levi Stadium is an amazing stadium. The comment I would make about it was that getting away from it after the game was an absolute nightmare, because it's not. There is a station there, I know, but I was going in the other direction, and it was a proper panic on to try and get ultimately to try and find a taxi, a cab to take me back to my hotel, and it was difficult. And there was only 35,000 at that game, not the sort of 76 or whatever it holds. So that there's a hotel by there, isn't there? But there's no kind of bars or anything there. Yeah. And we like that. We like things around or near to the stadium. Like I mentioned, the Mice Gwyn, that I'll go for a drinking before the game. But there are 4, 5, 6 different places close to the stadium at Wrexham. They'd love me to be in the ground doing that, by the way, and that's what they would want me to do with a new stand. But if my preference is to go elsewhere, I can go elsewhere. And there's plenty of choice, and that's where people meet, and that's where they eat and drink affordably in those other places. and they've been there a long time. The turf, for instance, I mean, that's been there ever since the ground's been there. So I think they'll stay where they are, and I think because the ground is such a part of the story as well, and it's the oldest international ground still in use in the world, and so there's history attached to that, and the history is very important. So I think they'll stay where they are, but I think there's a lot more work that will take place to develop all four sides of the ground ultimately.
And I guess my last question is this. Who would you like to see Wrexham get transferred over to the club?
um, how old's Messi now?
No, you're not getting him. He ain't moving. He's not going back. He's not going there. I'm sorry.
You say that, but then who would have predicted Wrexham would play in the Championship in 3 years after leaving the National League? Okay, so I started big. I'll come down. I think I don't know. Individual names is difficult. It'll be interesting to see what market they're shopping at for this because, as described, there are kind of some recruitment conundrums that they're going to have to overcome, both in terms of the finance, but also in terms of the facilities on offer. So whether that means, and one thing that they never have done thus far is recruit from overseas. So whether I think the potential is greater for that to be part of the strategy going forward, because there are players to be found in other countries who it might be said offer greater value for money than the home market at that level in particular. So I wonder whether that might become more of a strategy now that they might start to recruit from other countries. It's not something that's been a part of it, of course, over the last few years under Phil. The data is becoming increasingly important in terms of how people recruit as well, data analysis. So whether they start to move towards a more database model like your Brentfords and your Brighton and Hove Albions, we'll see. Because that identifies the player who fits the thing that you do. Well, that's the idea anyway. So I don't know. In terms of individuals, I don't know, but they're going to have to shop clever, and they're going to have to get in probably 6 or 7 or maybe more new players. And you'll probably see a similar number leaving as well. So I think there'll be quite a big turnaround. And it needs to be players who have operated at that level, probably need to bring the average age down a little bit now because you need legs in the Championship. You need to be able to run. So it'll be really interesting. James McLean's played at Championship level loads, but he's getting on in age now. So he came down from that level. He dropped down to League One. So he was coming down from the Championship. Is he going to go back up again? There's a reason, I presume, that he came down. So does he go back up again? And that same applies to some of the other. Matty James was playing at that level, didn't have a club. That's how Wrexham managed to sign him this mid-season. So nobody had picked him up as a player. So it'll be interesting to see whether they can still operate or whether they still has to operate at that level. But there's quite a lot of recruitment to do. Younger and more expensive. It's always more expensive.
I mean, look, you got to pay the price for all these promotions. So you got to go for those experienced players and at the same time, those new exciting ones that you hope to bring that excitement to the club. So we'll see what happens there. But Bryn, I appreciate your time with this. I know you're so happy to see Wrexham back on the map. They've been tremendous with Rob and Ryan as owners. Phil has been a tremendous manager to get what he needs from his players. And I mean, we'll see what happens next season, but if the dream does continue, you make the Premier League. I mean, obviously, I think the celebrations will continue on months and months and months before the season gets underway in the following year.
Well, that's true. I'll take you back to my earlier position on this one. I'm not anticipating it just yet.
Absolutely. Reality's got to set in sometime, And as we've already said, these championship clubs who've been in the Premier League before, they won't like it having the new star coming in, but we'll see what happens, and I know they'll be up for the challenge. That's for sure.
For sure.
For sure. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, this is Bryn Law, Leeds United TV broadcaster and Wrexham native, talking about the big Wrexham Fairytale that continues on now from National League to League Two, League One, now promoted to the championship. Don't forget, this Tuesday night and Wednesday night, U.S. Open Cup action. You can watch everything over online, Paramount Plus, as well as CBS Sports Glasgow Network, and of course, linear television on CBS Sports Network. Once again, for Bryn Law, thank you for joining me today. I'm Daniel Feuerstein. As always, please enjoy your football. Thank you. Have a good afternoon and talk to you next time. Bye-bye for now.